To understand what really happened on July 2, 2026, you have to look at one signature, not the content of the decree first, not the canonical implications first, the signature. Because the name at the bottom of the document that has sent 600,000 Catholics into a state of pastoral panic is the name of a man who, 3 years before signing it, stood in a cathedral and said that what this decree does is terrible. The name is Víctor Manuel Fernández, Cardinal, Prefect of the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, known throughout the Catholic world by the nickname Tucho, the official guardian of Catholic doctrine, the man appointed by Pope Francis to oversee what may and may not be taught in the Church. The theologian whose name is attached to the most contested documents of the current pontificate, from those concerning moral theology to those authorizing blessings for couples in irregular situations. His reputation, built across decades of writing and preaching, is that of a pastoral theologian, an enemy of rigidity, a defender of broad and generous mercy. A man who has made it his life's work to argue that the Church's doctrinal and canonical instruments should serve the faithful rather than burden them. On March 5, 2023, when he was still Archbishop of La Plata in Argentina, Fernández delivered a homily in his cathedral that is now being read with an attention it did not receive at the time. He said, in direct quotation, that his own supporters have circulated widely. For many centuries, the Church took a different path. Without realizing it, she developed an entire philosophical and moral system full of classifications to catalog people, to label them. He continued, this person can receive communion, that one cannot. This person can be forgiven, that one cannot. It is terrible that this happened to us in the Church. Thanks be to God, Pope Francis is helping us to free ourselves from these rigid patterns. Read that again and hold it. It is terrible to classify. It is terrible to say who can and who cannot, who is inside and who is outside. He said that in 2023, 3 years before signing the July 2 decree. And what did the July 2 decree do? It classified. These 6 bishops are excommunicated. These priests are in schism. These lay faithful, if they formally adhere, are excluded. This one may receive the sacraments. That one may not. The man who called this terrible has produced it. The theologian who wanted to free the Church from rigid patterns has imposed the most rigid pattern of all. The defender of mercy without distinction has drawn one of the sharpest lines in decades. Before going any further, the decree itself must be understood precisely, because the coverage surrounding it has collapsed a distinction that is canonically and pastorally critical. On July 2nd, the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith published not one document, but 2, a decree and an explanatory note. These are not the same instrument, and they do not carry the same legal force, and treating them as though they do is the source of most of the confusion that has followed. The decree is a penal act in the strict canonical sense. It names 6 bishops. It declares their automatic excommunication under Canon 13082 for the act of consecrating or being consecrated as a bishop without the pontifical mandate. It is limited, precise, directed at specific individuals for a specific act. This is what latae sententiae means in practice. The sentence pronounced itself at the moment the act was committed on July 1st. The July 2nd decree is a declaratory confirmation of something that had already happened by operation of law. The explanatory note is a different kind of document entirely. It states that the priests of the society are in schism. It states that lay faithful who formally adhere to the society are excommunicated. These statements are not a penal act. They are not a declaratory sentence against named individuals. They are, in the canonical vocabulary that defines what such documents can and cannot do, a doctrinal explanation. Its purpose is to clarify a position, not to impose a penalty by legal act. The distinction matters for one reason above all others. Latae sententiae excommunication, the automatic kind that the note invokes regarding the lay faithful, is not applied to categories of people en masse. It requires an assessment of individual guilt according to specific criteria. Rome's own note provides those criteria, and they involve two elements that must be present together. The first is internal, consciously and freely sharing the essence of the schism, which the note defines as placing the path of the society above obedience to the Pope. This is an act of conscience that cannot be observed from the outside. The second is external, exclusive and stable participation in the society's activities to the exclusion of participation in the life of the Catholic Church. Not an occasional visit, a total and permanent substitution of the society's structures for the Catholic Church's. Both elements together. Neither alone is sufficient. A Catholic who attends a society mass out of love for the ancient rite, who does not reject the Pope's authority, who has not made the society their exclusive and permanent Catholic home, does not meet Rome's own criteria for formal adherence to the schism. That person is not excommunicated. The note itself, read carefully and completely, says so. But the note was not read carefully and completely by every bishop who received it. Bishop Lavallee of Ogdensburg, New York, published a letter on July 1st declaring the society in formal schism and instructing the faithful of his diocese not to participate in the society's liturgies, not to receive its sacraments, and not to enroll their children in its schools. He stated that continued participation in the society's activities would constitute formal adherence to the schism. The message that landed in the ears of ordinary Catholics was simple and devastating. Go back there and you are excommunicated. You are outside the Church. That message is not what Rome's documents actually say. It is what a rushed and imprecise application of those documents communicates when the canonical distinctions between a penal decree and an explanatory note, between formal adherence and occasional attendance, between the 6 bishops who are actually excommunicated and the 600,000 faithful who are not, are collapsed into a single frightening headline. And here is where Fernández's 2023 homily returns with a force that his signature on the July 2nd documents makes impossible to dismiss. He said it is terrible to place burdens on consciences through classification and labeling. He said it is terrible to tell people who is inside and who is outside. He said these rigid patterns from which Pope Francis is helping the Church to be freed are a kind of institutional disease that has caused damage across centuries. The pastoral damage produced by the July 2nd documents in the 48 hours following their publication is precisely the kind of damage his 2023 homily was describing. Faithful who are not excommunicated believe they are. People who attend society masses occasionally out of love for the ancient rite, who have never rejected the Pope, who have never made the society their exclusive Catholic community, are being told by their local bishop that returning to a society chapel constitutes formal adherence to a schism and makes them excommunicated. Consciences that carry no canonical guilt are bearing a burden that the documents themselves, read with the precision Fernández himself demanded in other contexts, do not impose on them. This is the short circuit that his signature creates. Not simply the inconsistency of a man who said one thing and did another, though that inconsistency is real and consequential. The deeper short circuit is this: the theological framework Fernández built his reputation on, the insistence that the Church's instruments of classification and exclusion cause terrible damage to real souls, is being validated by the very documents he signed. The mechanism he spent years criticizing is the mechanism his dicastery has set in motion, and the souls bearing the weight of it are not the souls that the pastoral theology of mercy and accompaniment was designed to protect. They are traditionalist Catholics who love the ancient Mass. That asymmetry is the real story of July 2nd, and it does not end with the decree. The asymmetry that Fernández's signature makes visible is not an isolated instance of personal inconsistency. It is the visible edge of a pattern that has been building across the current pontificate, and that the events of the first days of July 2026 have brought into a clarity that can no longer be managed through careful communication or diplomatic ambiguity. To see the pattern whole, you have to look at what was happening in the Catholic world in the same days that the July 2nd decree was being prepared and signed. In Central Africa, a young priest named Father Capen baptized 175 people. The following day he was shot dead. A martyr in the most precise sense of that word, a man killed for the faith he was actively transmitting. The response from Rome was nearly silent. No solemn decree, no formal communiqué, no document bearing Fernández's signature marking the gravity of what had happened or honoring the witness this priest had given. The machinery of the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith, which found the resources and the urgency to produce a decree and an explanatory note about 6 bishops in Switzerland within 24 hours of the Econ consecrations, had nothing formal to say about a priest martyred for baptizing in Africa. In Cambodia, a Catholic bishop accepted a ceremonial role as protector of Buddhist teachings and publicly announced his financial support for a Buddhist school. He declared that when religions live together, the world will see true peace. This is not a subtle theological ambiguity. It is explicit syncretism, the kind of doctrinal confusion that Dominus Iesus, signed by Ratzinger and approved by John Paul II in 2000, addressed with direct and unambiguous language. No decree followed. No explanatory note was issued. No bishop in any diocese instructed the faithful to avoid that bishop's liturgies or to refrain from sending their children to institutions connected with him. And then China. Bishops ordained by the communist government without the pontifical mandate during the sede vacante. Not declared schismatic, not excommunicated, ratified, the same act that triggered automatic excommunication for 6 bishops at Econ, performed by an atheist state during a papal vacancy in dioceses that already had bishops, was absorbed into the system and eventually given Vatican approval. The decree that names 6 society bishops as excommunicated does not name the Chinese bishops ordained by Beijing during the vacancy of the Holy See. It does not address the Cambodian bishop who positions himself as a protector of Buddhist doctrine. It does not mark the martyrdom of a priest in Central Africa with anything approaching the institutional weight given to the events of July 1st in Switzerland. Place those 4 situations side by side. The martyr forgotten. The Buddhist bishop tolerated, the communist-appointed bishops ratified, the society punished with the most severe canonical instrument available. And then ask the question that Fernández's own 2023 homily demands to be asked. What is the criterion? Because if the criterion were doctrinal coherence, the Cambodian bishop's syncretism would require a more urgent response than a fraternity that professes every article of the creed. If the criterion were canonical consistency, the Chinese consecrations during a papal vacancy would require at least the same institutional seriousness as the Econ consecrations. If the criterion were fidelity to the explicit teaching of the magisterium, then Dominus Iesus would be invoked as readily against explicit syncretism as Canon 1:1382 is invoked against consecrations without a mandate. The criterion is none of those things. Or rather, those criteria are applied selectively. And the variable that determines whether they are applied with maximum severity or maximum patience is not the gravity of the doctrinal or canonical issue involved. It is the direction of the deviation. Deviation toward what the current institutional culture regards as progressive, toward inclusion, toward dialogue, toward the dissolution of boundaries that it regards as obstacles to encounter, is met with patience, accompaniment, and the repeated insistence that no door is closed. Deviation toward tradition, toward the ancient rite, toward the insistence that the boundaries the tradition has always maintained are not obstacles but protections, is met with the most severe canonical instrument available, and with bishops instructing their faithful to avoid the institutions involved. Fernández said in 2023 that classifying people, drawing lines between who is inside and who is outside, is terrible. He was right. It is terrible when it is done unjustly, when the instrument of classification is applied without consistency, when the burden falls not on those whose deviation from the faith is most serious, but on those whose love for the tradition is most visible. What his 2023 homily described as terrible is precisely what the July 2nd documents have produced for hundreds of thousands of faithful who have never rejected the Pope, never abandoned the faith, never sought anything more than to worship God in the form that the Church used for 1500 years. A man can change his mind. A theologian can mature. A cardinal can arrive at positions in office that he did not hold before assuming its responsibilities. These are not in themselves scandals. What cannot be accepted without examination is a situation in which the change runs in one specific direction, in which the mercy that was preached without distinction becomes, in practice, mercy distributed according to ideological sympathy, in which the rigidity that was called terrible becomes, in practice, the instrument applied to those on the wrong side of the current institutional preference. The 600,000 faithful who found themselves reading the July 2nd documents and trying to understand whether they were still inside the Church they love deserve an honest account of what those documents actually say and what they do not say. They are not excommunicated. The priests who serve them are not excommunicated. The masses celebrated in society chapels are valid. Attending them occasionally out of devotion to the ancient rite does not make a person a schismatic. Rome's own explanatory note, read with the care that canonical documents require, establishes criteria for formal adherence that most occasional attendees do not meet. But they also deserve something more than a technical clarification of canonical scope. They deserve an honest acknowledgement of what the pattern of these days reveals about the Church they belong to. A church in which a bishop can publicly position himself as a protector of Buddhist teachings without triggering a decree from the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith. A church in which communist-appointed bishops are ratified while society bishops are excommunicated. A church in which a martyr's death generates near-institutional silence, while 6 consecrations in Switzerland generate 2 documents within 24 hours. A church in which the prefect who signs those documents once stood in a cathedral and said that this kind of classification is terrible. Catholic doctrine is not seasonal. It does not change according to who holds office or which direction the institutional culture is currently favoring. The faith that the Society has preserved, with all its tensions and all its canonical complications, is the same faith that was proclaimed before any of the current controversies existed. The Mass they celebrate is the Mass in which the saints were formed. The doctrine they hold is the doctrine that the Church defined across councils and centuries and martyrdoms. Words endure. A homily delivered in a cathedral in Argentina in 2023 endures. The faithful who read that homily and then read the July 2nd decree are not wrong to notice the distance between them. They are not wrong to ask what changed. They are not wrong to expect that the man who called this terrible in 2023 offer some account of why he signed it in 2026. That account has not yet been given. The decree stands. The explanatory note stands. The 6 bishops are excommunicated. And Fernández's 2023 words stand alongside all of it, not as a weapon against him, but as a mirror held up to a moment in which mercy and severity, accompaniment and condemnation, open doors and locked ones, are distributed not according to the truth, but according to something else entirely. Above cardinals, above decrees, above the contradictions of men who hold great office and carry them with varying degrees of consistency, there is a truth that no signature can alter. That truth does not change with the seasons. It does not favor one direction of deviation over another. It applies the same criterion to everyone, always, without exception. That criterion will have its say. It always does. What do you think? Leave a comment below. Amen. God bless you.